Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 303. And we've got a couple special guests. One of them requested to be on the show because that number has a certain significance, and we'll probably get into that a little bit. But we've got a good topic to talk about today. So we got a full house. We've got 5 people here. So we're going to start going around. And also, if you're watching this live, you'll probably realize that it is Wednesday. Usually we do this on Thursdays, but there's some stuff coming up, so we just decided we were going to do this early, especially since we took last week off. Did we take last week, or was that the previous week?
Last week.
Was it last week? Yeah, for Thanksgiving and everything. Okay, yeah. So we definitely didn't want to skip it, but we couldn't do Thursday, so we're back. So I don't know if we'll have how many people will actually have watching, because it's kind of one of those odd days. But I do see Keeman in the chat. How's it going? Let's get going, and I guess I'll kick everything off. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. You're on my channel, so that's where you can find me on YouTube. Also, want to let everyone know right now that I have a 50% off deal going on for all my digital products. So if you want like the Comic Maker Toolkit, the Amazing Comic Book World Builder, the Hero Design Studio, all that stuff, plus my comics, my digital comics, that's available at Serkworks.com for a limited time, 50% off. So you can definitely go there and check that stuff out. And then I'm just going to go as far as what I'm seeing. I'm going to go clockwise. I'm going to kick it over to Josh.
All right. So I'm going to be at LA Comic-Con this Friday through Sunday. And I think the section I'm at is like C55 in the Artist Alley. So come by. There should be, fingers crossed, they still haven't arrived yet, but there's supposedly going to be some special edition prints that are only going to be available at that are drawn by my buddy Chris Caligua. There are promotionals for my book Jacob's Apartment from Graphic Mundi that's coming out in May. But we're going to be handing those out. And the cool thing is, if you come to my booth, I'm splitting it with Chris Caligua, so you can get it signed by Chris too. And also check out his wares and stuff at the convention. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, 2 Stories Book 1 is on Amazon right now for your buying enjoyment. So if you don't want to pick up a copy at LA Comic-Con this weekend, then, go there and do that. Yeah.
All right, Cory, can you speak long enough? I know you had kind of a cough, but
yeah, I'll mute myself. No, Frank, I'll mute myself if I start cough. You can just find me at CoryKerr.com, and right now I am taking the rest of the year off to just play around and make whatever I want. So if you want to see that, you can kind of go to probably Instagram is probably the best place for seeing that stuff, because I'm too lazy to put it anywhere else. So I'm just drawing random faces. That's kind of what's going on right now. So
all right, who do we got here? We got a note from Gary. Okay. Gary, why don't you kick it off? Or not kick it off? We've already kicked it off. Why don't you continue as we go around the room, the virtual room?
So I'm Gary Hodges. I write and draw and print and sell the indie sci-fi horror comic D vs. M, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots. You can find me at Instagram, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots, or what would be really, really awesome is to find me on YouTube, where I'm under my name, Gary Hodges. Look for me. You'll know it's me because the icon is it's a dinosaur eating an alien. You'll find all sorts of things about my comic stuff. I'm trying to pump up my subscription numbers. So do me a favor and go over there and subscribe.
Yeah, there's a lot of great content on there, which we'll get into some of the later content that you put up recently. But before we do that, we're going to kick it over to Jim. Jim, what's going on? Anything to promote?
Working on my next film, which is inside of this book right here.
Nice.
Sweet.
I don't know how I'm going to get it out of the book onto screens, but I'll figure that out. I just also wanted to comment on show 303. Very, very important because, as you know, Portnoy used to say when quoting Vernoy's work that there was a great verisimilitude. And it's a
It
very
didn't go as well as planned.
I don't know
Just
if
so breezy and effortless. And
I
natural.
probably should have mentioned I don't know words. That's a big factor. It's like giving a chimpanzee a saxophone. So, but I am working on a new film. I just started it. I'll be announcing that. I'm sure you'll see it on all the Entertainment Tonights, TMZs, etc. Soon. And what else? See my latest film, Pleasure Beast, on YouTube, jimlujan.com. And thank you. Good night. I've promoted everything. Good night.
All right. Jim, I thought he was going to bring it up, but he didn't. But so 303, Jim was kind of vying to be on this episode because I guess, and you must have done some research or something, or
I
just
think I was on 101.
101. Were you
I don't
on
know if I was on
202?
202. I don't know.
Well, I thought that was the whole thing. I thought you were on 202
Well,
as well.
it's planning for the future.
Okay, well, you
Are you
can't
trying
plan
to separate-
backwards.
Yeah.
So I'll be on 404.
Okay.
And 505. And then,
All right. So yes, Jim made a special request that he wanted to be on 303 because evidently he's superstitious and but he decided to also share his time with our other guest, Gary Hodges, which I think is great because our topic today is character development, and both of you guys on your YouTube channels have been putting out, or have in the past put out, videos kind of focusing on some of the characters from either your comics or your films. So I think it's perfect that we have you guys on there. And like I said, definitely go check out those if you haven't already. Check out Jim's channel, check out Gary's channel. Not only for all the great content, but specifically what we're talking about today as far as diving into character and what's behind them and everything, and how to develop a good character. So you want, I guess I'll start it off since you were the one that kind of brought up this topic, Jim. I'll let you sort of kick it off.
Gary, I win.
I'm just gonna sit here and get drunk, I guess.
All right. Okay. Backstory. Actually, funnily enough, Gary was huge in inspiring me to get back into backstory for characters. When I watched
back in there. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I watched Mr. Hodges, the defendant. I watched his videos that he did on Jenny, and now he has one on Latino Super Cop, I think his name is.
That's his name. Yeah, legal name.
And when I watched his video, and if you haven't seen it, go check it out on Gary's YouTube channel. But he did a video on one of his characters, Jenny, and he just really talked about who she is and what she's about, and what she might have been thinking and where she comes from. And part of me wanted to write Gary an email and say, Gary, she's not real. Then
she seems real.
But then I realized I might do the same thing. I do exactly the same thing as Gary, and he just does it very well. But I always, whenever I create a character, I usually create a backstory to them. And it might be something really quick, something that I know that I'll never be shown on screen, but it kind of helps form the character a little bit and some of their decisions. Maybe tonight, I also wanted to talk a little bit, later on we can get into it, about the dangers of doing too much backstory, because then it's like, I'm going to continually create this backstory and never actually do anything with the character. Mm-hmm. And then you live in, it's like, yeah. But definitely it does help with guiding your character's behavior and things like that. And to me, it's really fun beyond anything. And Gary does do it very well. And I suggest you check out his videos on that. And I'll talk about Character Assassin tonight too.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
So Jim, you have all these eccentric characters. If anyone has ever watched any of your animations, I'm just wondering how much of those, how much is based on people that you actually know, or are these totally whole cloth out of your head when you're designing a character? I mean, is it all different?
It's all different. It's all different. Like I have this one character who's a serial killer named Serkland, and he's just almost unbelievably bizarre. I can't even explain him. But no, it can come from just doing a doodle of a character and saying, "Oh, this guy looks like his name would be Dwayne," and then just coming up with a story. It all kind of falls into place really quickly, usually. Or it could come from an idea of an archetype of a character that I want to do. I want to do a character that's like a wrestling manager. So it can come from anywhere, and also the amount of backstory really depends on how involved this character is going to be in the story. To me, because if a character is in a story for 5 seconds, I won't ahead of time sit there and create a huge backstory for that character. But it is fun to go back later on and create a backstory. But for all of the main characters, they all have backstories, though, for me.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jim, I kind of feel like a lot of the characters that are in the background of some of your animations that maybe were just ancillary characters, like suddenly become like these primary characters in later Lujan cartoons. And I love that about those cartoons too. It's like, I think you'll do like a background character and like maybe
Freak Daddy,
like a year later just be like, I really like that guy. I'm going to make up his backstory.
My character Freak Daddy was a background character in like one of the very first cartoons I've ever did. He was a DJ, and then I put him in another cartoon, another cameo, and he kind of worked his way up to the top echelon to get his own film. But I do that all the time, and I think I've said this before on Artcasters. My main characters would be the side characters in other movies, like the weird friend, but that's who I put as my protagonist. And so it happens even within my movies. It happens where the weird background characters could become a main character later on in another film. So
okay, I have a specific question. First, I have to read something, which is always great on the air.
Verisimilitude.
I'm going to never be able to say that word correctly again. Verisimilitude. So this is I finished this character, and I don't do backstories. Like, I just don't. The only time I've really done it is when I was working on a Jim Lujan cartoon, and I was like, this guy's probably a crack addict, so he's going to shake a little bit. This guy, I started like giving them mannerisms based on that. Anyway, so I said, this is what I wrote, just late at night, and I thought this would be funny, and then this is what happened. So I said, I love drawing the elderly. Here's a farmer. I want Jim Lujan to give him a backstory. And that was it. And so then I wake up to Jim saying his name is Vernon Luntz, a farmer from Ketchum, Idaho. Vernon was a lightweight champion boxer in the U.S. Navy in 1953. His wife, Dora, was Miss Omaha runner-up in 1961. Their eldest son, Dumont, has decided not to take up the family tradition of farming, this causing a lot of tension with the Lutz family. Vernon is working with his nephew, Elton, on a possible solution. So I just want to know, like, was that just like stream of consciousness, like the first thing that you thought of, and it took you like 30 seconds to come up with it? Or did you like think about it for a while?
Lutz is the last name of the family in the Amityville Horror, I think. Mm-hmm. And the rest I just made up. Really, it was the first thing that I thought of, and one thing kind of led to another. And yeah, stream of consciousness. No research was done. So, but there is a Ketchum, Idaho. I did look at a map and went, oh, Ketchum, Idaho. And I don't know what they grow there, though. So.
And then somebody else says, my great uncle looks just like this, and he usually has soot on his face, too. and that person never showed me a picture of their great uncle. You can't leave a comment like that.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that the two of you are able to just like dive in and do this. I'll have to throw one of these at Gary at some point.
I love it. I've given all of you backstories.
What's mine? What's mine?
Oh, Gary, you know, you're the front story in my heart.
Oh gosh.
That's a good segue. Good segue to go to him now.
All right. Yeah, I'll move over to Gary then. So Gary, you've put out.
I loved that reading, by the way. We'll move over to Gary then.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
go
kind of
ahead.
like, I guess, Gary. All right, Gary, what you got?
So I know you have a lot to talk about on this subject, and I know you've probably done a few interviews where you've talked about this as well. And I am so interested in the videos that you put out already. Talking about, have you done more than the two, or are those the only ones that you've done?
Those
so
are the
far?
only two so far.
Yeah. You've done one, Ruben, and then Jenny.
Ruben and Jenny. Sometime next year, before my next comic comes out, I'll do one on George, who's the nickname kind of old man in black from 1975. And then once the next comic is out, I'll do the main POV character from that one.
But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to hear you talk about your process and everything. And you can see, I mean, anyone that's read one of Gary's comics, I mean, so much of that comes through with the acting and the little choices and just little things that he throws in there, whether it's a broken headlight, which isn't really a character, but it also speaks to who that character is, and different things like that, the way people hold cigarettes, the way they glance one way, or I mean, it really is. I mean, you are just sort of a master at capturing these little character traits. So I don't know. I mean, I was going to say without rehashing, but I mean, this is a different show, so go ahead. And if you want to rehash whatever, how do you go about, say, with like a character like Ginny? Where does that start from?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, I appreciate the compliment. Where does that start from? I think there's a lot of ways I could answer that, but I think the simplest is you're building a character. I'm thinking about two different things. I'm thinking about, am I constructing a character that's interesting and has a bunch of qualities that fit together logically? Like, this seems like a real person. It's not just a collection of attributes that don't necessarily go together. Like, could you buy this person as a real person? And try to make them fleshed out and have some depth and have something about them that's interesting, come up with good things about them and bad things about them. And you do all the normal exercises of who are they? Who do they think there are? What is the gap between those two things? Like all these kind of writery exercises. But what you're also doing at the same time is, they're going to fit into a story. So you're trying to build your characters and your story a little simultaneously. You're trying to think about what sort of person would create the most interesting chemistry in the story I'm writing, and what kind of story would be the most challenging or unique or different for the kind of character I'm writing. You're sort of, it's neither one is being built in isolation. You're trying to get them both even, where ultimately, if you did it right, you have a character that's just right for the story you want to tell and will result in the most sparks and the most dramatic interest and the most, interest for a reader.
Yep. So I think where I can go from there.
I have a question for the suspect.
The suspect?
I mean, sorry, for the guest.
Yeah.
Gary, and I've never asked him this, do you prefer creating the backstory when the character has already been introduced, or at least you've introduced them in the story, or do you do all the backstory before you even start writing the story?
Well, not to. I mean, this gets into like it's this Clintonian. Depends what your definition of is. Depends when you consider like a story as being written. Like when I'm getting prepared to write the story, you know, and I'm doing all the research I need to do and fleshing out the idea in my mind. That's when I'm building sort of the character and the backstory. Once I'm actually writing page 1 of the script, what is hopefully going to be a first draft, I pretty much have made every major decision I want to make about that character. Because again, I'm sort of trying to build them up simultaneously in my mind. What's the situation? What are the challenges I'm coming up with for my story? What's the right character for those challenges? What kind of character am I designing? What would be a neat situation to throw that character into? Building those up. I don't do a lot of retroactive, like for example, if you've watched the Jenny Burke video or the Ruben Garcia video, all the things I say about Jenny and Ruben in those videos, that was all stuff I knew when I was drawing those comics. You know, like that was all, like I don't really go back and revisit, like once the comic's done, I don't really do any further work on
So
it.
does Boy Scout murdered Boy Scout number 7,
No,
does he have a backstory?
no, he doesn't. No, it really, so the level, if you watch those videos, and again, like if you go to my YouTube channel, I think I made a playlist and it's like character development analysis or whatever it is, where it's like I spend time going, like taking a deep dive into my main characters. If you're unfamiliar with D versus M, it's an anthology sci-fi series. Each individual installment has a specific POV character. And those are the ones I put all my chips on. Like I really invest and get those fleshed out. Every other character in the story is significantly less fleshed out because they don't need to be. Like each story is really this person's eyewitness account of this sci-fi war. So no, the Boy Scouts, I don't know anything. I think I might know the name of like the Scoutmaster, and that's it. I know his name. Like because I had to write it at one point. I know a little bit about Cynthia in D versus M 1997, who's the woman who's interviewing Jenny. Like I did come up with, yeah, I came
especially
up
because
with,
there's so much of an interaction between those two, and
yeah,
you know these.
It's almost directly related to like how much is this character talking. That's how much I want to know about them. Because it's, you know, I was thinking about this today. You usually in D versus M, you generally are never going to see these characters ever again. Like I have, like in 40 to 60 pages, I have to tell basically a little short story about this person and something that happened to them. I don't have like a lot of comic series, 50 or 100 issues to kind of gradually and leisurely decide who this character is. And I can't afford to sketch them out real crudely in issue 1 and add stuff on issue 15 and 35 and 72. Like I need the whole thing. I have one bite of the apple. So that it puts a lot of, I don't want to say pressure. I mean, I enjoy it, but the burden's on me to really flesh out these characters completely before I even draw the comic. So
yeah, that's a really good point because you do have limited time to introduce yourself to introduce the audience to these characters, and it's done so well. I mean, when you read that book, yeah.
Well, then that's where things like Jenny's Fiero having one of the headlights stuck up, like those are the little things I need. Like I need to, you know, I kind of need to bootstrap character in every way I can because I need to, like, the reader needs to get this person as quickly as possible, you know, like, and so much of the drama of the D versus M comics relies on you getting this person and understand. You don't necessarily have to like them, but you need to at least get them and understand them and read them as a real human being.
Or at least in your opinion, Gary, do you think you could tell a story on that level without doing any backstory?
I don't think so.
It would be.
I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but I don't think I could do it. You know, I think the way I think about how plot and the character interact, I think what makes a character interesting is those little texture pieces, you know. And I think I don't like just willy-nilly just adding, like, let's say he has a scar and like just throw something in there. Like I need to kind of think, like, you know, why does he have a scar? What happened? And
I love doing that.
What's that?
I'm the complete opposite. I
Yeah,
love doing that.
me
Well,
too,
there you go.
Cory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me
I'm
too.
just,
Well,
like,
yeah.
I'm just like, what weird things can I give this person to make them not look like the photo I'm referencing? Or what strange, bizarre thing, kind of like that black box writing of like, if I need an answer to this, I might have to figure it out later. But right now, here's the question.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, see, and that's something that kind of like what I was saying before, like I really don't have the luxury to get into. Like I think I need to understand what all this means. Since again, I'm only going to get one shot at this. I'm going to get like 40 to 60 pages to visit this character. And I think my anxiety would be, again, it's not that it's not possible, but the way I write, I would need to feel comfortable that all these attributes and traits I'm piling into a person somehow fit together and make logical sense. And I think I'm glad Squatchy showed up to keep me on task. This counts, Squatch. It makes me think about the process.
Yes.
I think my fear, and I don't know if this is a reasonable fear or not, my fear would be if I said, like, okay, let's say this character, you know, waxes his mustache and has a weird scar and, you know, plays with his keys and this, like, whatever, just come up with random, like, attributes and don't think about it, like, why, or get kind of one layer down. I think my fear would be I would write this comic, I'd put it out, and a year later I'd realize, like, well, that doesn't really make sense, you know, and that would bother me.
Gary, when you were a child, were you the type that put the puzzle together by focusing on the actual photo reference, or did you just pick up the pieces and go, this fits, this fits, this fits?
I looked at the photo, and and also, by the way, you do the borders first. If you start building the middle part, you can just get the hell out of here, right?
100% agree with the borders.
Yeah,
you find those corner pieces.
I have a very methodical, you know, process.
When you play with Legos, do you ever deviate from the instructions?
No. I know. I was going to bring that up because I don't think I've ever built any Legos based on the instructions. I just open the bags, right? And I just build whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, if
as a kid, I was like Scott.
Manual, why am I? In fact, it always.
As a kid, I was like Scott, but as an adult, it's like when I'm trying to help him build it, I'm like, make sure you follow everything because he'll like skip an instruction.
Yeah, my kids do that
when
when they did Legos. They followed the instructions, but I don't think I've ever built anything. Maybe I may have once. I think I remember I had a spaceship that looked pretty much like it looked on the thing, but
I'm trying a new thing just to see if I can handle it, because I realized that my 3-year-old son broke into my studio, which probably has like a couple hundred like action figures in it that are not for him to play with because they're for his 41-year-old father.
Yes.
And I realized that like I probably have a problem. And so what I've been trying to do recently is like I will build the Legos with him. And then instead of taking it and saying, no, this is Dad's now, you don't get to touch it, I'm like, all right, have fun with it. And I just try to really be okay with whatever he does with it after that.
Oh, I think I would be good enough to not enforce that quality in myself on somebody else. But when it comes to me, no. I make by the thing is I'm also like a plastic model kit guy. Like more than Legos, I did model kits. And that was a thing where it's like, if you do it wrong, you end up with trash. Right. Like there is only kind of, there's only like, you can only do it well or best. There's not really like I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the decals from this kit and I'm going to like,
I think the creativity in that probably comes from the aesthetics of like the painting and the things like that you do on top of that once it's constructed with models, I'm guessing.
Oh, I think kit bashing would be awesome. Okay, so
that is true. Yeah, you can do
kit bashing is fun, but I think I was always, and this is the same with the characters to kind of pull it back. Like I was always, when I was building model kits, it's like I want this to look like the real thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like I want this to
Whereas-
look authentic. I want to do the weathering. I want to, you know, look at photographs of the real thing and make this look right. It's kind of the same with my human characters. It's like I want them to pass for like some, like I want people to come to me like they have and say like, "Is this somebody you know?" You know,
Yeah.
like this is
Yeah.
like that's
Right.
that's what I'm chasing. So
Because when you get those just little, I don't know, idiosyncrasies or whatever, I mean, it seems so real. It's almost like, he couldn't have just come up with this out of his head. He had to have witnessed somewhere. This has to be based on somebody. And I know just based on the way I create characters, a lot of them are based on people I know and things like that. But I mean, they're so fleshed out. It's almost hard to believe that wasn't. And I'd like to know how much of that is observed, like from what you observe from other people. Do you borrow that, or is it just like, is it all just out of your head?
I think it's mostly. I mean, I think it's all drawn from. But that's another tough thing. I think I can't point to any particular. I'm thinking about them right now to make sure this is a true answer. I can't think of anything that's actually like somebody else's story, my own or somebody else's, that I lifted and gave a character, you know, like just whole cloth. But I think there's a lot of things sort of inspired by or that got my imagination going, and I came up with my own version of that. Like I see in the comments here, my girlfriend showed up, Mary Jackson. Let's see here. Have my characters' POVs ever reframed your story? For example, is Jenny's recounting of the story in 97, the objective reality depicting? Oh, that's interesting. So if I'm understanding that right, is the character's POV what actually happened, or am I showing her version of it?
He won't tell you. He won't tell you, Mary. I've tried.
Have you thought of that?
You'll
Have
never
you
have to
tried?
know.
It sounds like this is the first time you've considered that.
That's an interesting, so in that case, no. I think Jenny has a fairly, her recollection, and that's why her recollection is not great. Like, it's pretty much like what she's saying is more or less accurate. Though I did play with that. This is a conversation I had with Jim. I played with the idea of maybe what you see in the comic is not actually what happened for 75. Jim, do you remember the story where I was talking about I had an alternate version? Or this is not really. I mean, it's kind of 75 spoilers if you think you might go read D vs. M 1975. There was an early version of 75 where I thought the Blake character, which is the child in the house, might have all been a hallucination from the alien gas on Ruben's part. That he wasn't actually there, that Ruben, it was all just like instilled by the gas. And like the tease of it is that the older man in black never seems to notice Blake or talk to Blake or interact with Blake at all. There was a version of the story where I played with that, where like that Blake never even existed. Or existed in some form, but not in the way we see in the story. But like, so I like that idea, but to answer Mary's question, no, their versions are basically accurate. Basically.
I love the idea of an unreliable narrator, though, and I think if it's done well, and comics are uniquely suited to that too, where you can have somebody like stating their recollection and then something completely different is occurring. Yes. And so you can kind of marry the two together. That's a really cool thing to play with. I will say also, like, do you think maybe part of why Gary, like, and this goes for you too, Jim, like, you guys both do very character-driven stories where it's like there's a plot, but it's like it's very much driven by the characters. It's not like a very heavy plot-driven story. And do you think that kind of influences like the focus on characters, or is it the fact that you get like really enjoy focusing on characters what drives you to kind of do like character-driven stuff?
Well, for one, I'm offended that you said we have no plots, and I'm sure Gary is very offended as well.
Actually, I was just going to say, like, I think we're done here. I think.
Let's go. Herman?
We're done. Jim, you and me, we're doing our own stream right now.
when Jim Lujan creates a story, Jim Lujan likes to, I'm going a little bit through that right now. So it's a good time to ask this question. If the characters kind of lead the story, or if the story leads the characters, what I'm finding is, and this is very fresh in my mind, it's like building a song, kind of. You could hear something and you go, you know what, this song, like most songs, really needs tambourine. And you add tambourine. You don't sit down and go, oh, this is going to have this, and tambourine. I mean, you could, but yeah. So in other words, to be more specific, it's pacing. A lot of times when I'm creating a story, I'll have a scene, and then the scene will happen, and then I'll say, you know what really would work right now? It's a roller skate kung fu fight. That would really set the tone. And so it's to me, it's because I build my stories differently than Gary does. I kind of on the fly will add or subtract major things from the plot because it feels like this is what it needs right now. And at the other side of that coin, I always know the ending of the movie when I'm creating it. So I never get into a situation where I've written myself into a corner, because I always know here's the end game. It's going to end here, but I don't know how I get there all the time. So, but to me, that's fun. It keeps it fresh for me. And again, it's different than writing comics, because comics, you really have to estimate. I mean, something as simple as page turns, your reveal. With me, I kind of build as I go. It's like more a little bit pliable, it's like clay. And so in summary, everything Gary said earlier was probably wrong. Just don't listen to him, people.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I mean, and we brought this up that I mean, there's not one right way to create characters. Everyone's got their own thing. I mean, Cory said that's the exact opposite of the way he does it. So I do want to kind of go around the room and give everyone a chance to at least briefly explain how they approach characters. So I wanted to find out from Josh. I mean, a lot of your work is autobiographical, but then with like Jacob's Apartment, it's fictional, but I imagine there's still probably a lot of your real life experiences that inform those characters. I'm guessing. So what's I mean, when you are creating a character that isn't based on you or the people how do you approach that, Josh? Like in Jacob's Apartment?
Yeah, so in Jacob's Apartment, like that started with a plot, and generally like something that'll kind of tip off a story for me is like I'll kind of think of like a scene. I don't know where these things come from, but even in autobio stuff where I'll have like a specific thing that happened that I'd like to write about. And then that's sort of the spark that sort of starts like starting to kind of do the groundwork to like building a story arc and stuff. And so for like Jacob's Apartment, it was like, I was in Long Beach at the time. I used to ride the like metro a lot, and I was on the metro like listening to a song, and I went by this old Victorian apartment, and it just gave me this crazy idea like of like, okay, well, if somebody's like heading on the subway for some reason to like do this thing, and then like it sort of built out from there. But then like when I finally figured out like the plot and kind of what I wanted to write about, I was like, I want to write about like losing a family member because my father had passed away like fairly recently to me beginning that script. And so I was like, I want to kind of talk about some of those issues of like just sort of losing a loved one. But I also I want to have this story that's almost like two houses. Like it's basically like a very toned down Romeo and Juliet where it's like two separate houses where it's like for some reason like you have these people who kind of meet, fall in love, and then they can't kind of be together because of differences. And instead of differing families, I was like, it might be interesting if it's like based on religion. And so it's like one's like religious and the other's not, and one's losing their faith and the other's kind of seeking and finding like purpose and like other things. And so they're at this like crossroads where like when they're in the middle, they can kind of meet and be together, and then like they're going to separate and go their separate ways. And then from there, I started thinking about like just opposites, but opposites with enough commonality where you could actually believe a romance between two characters. So I was like, it's going to be like an atheist and a Christian who are like roommates because they have like, you know, the Christians looking for Christian roommates, and Christian roommates are all creepy. And so they kind of end up like sort of in this scenario where they're living in the same apartment. They have like similar interests in like literature and stuff like that. And it starts building from there. And then like the depth of the story kind of fills in from there, you know, where it's like, you know, like starting to figure out like the backstory of like Sarah and what would make her a believable character who's struggling with the things I wanted her to be, that would kind of bring her to the point where I needed her to be in the story. And so like, most of it was like kind of figuring out, like once I had my story arc, it was like, what background information do I need to give these characters to compel them to do what I need them to do for the story to advance? And that one was really interesting because that one was done before I scripted comics fully. So I kind of had a rough idea, but I didn't really know how it was going to end. And that was definitely a learning experience. And ever since then, I fully script everything. But I will say the ending of that surprised me, and that was very character driven, where it just sort of like was an ending that had to happen the way it did. And it wasn't necessarily the way I mapped it out. And that was like that fun part. And I'm sure Gary and Jim understand this too. It's like sometimes you flesh out a character, you put them in your plot, you have this like pre-planned plot. You're like, this is all going to work out great. And then as writing starts doing that cool thing that writing does, when you start fleshing out characters, they start kind of doing their own thing. And it's a little frustrating because as a writer, you know, like the more you know your character, the more you know what's authentic for your character. So sometimes something you might have intended to be an ending has to change to be fair and fit the character. And so that was, I don't know, that's a long-winded way of putting it, but it's like, it's a really interesting exploration, and I love doing it. You know, like coming up with like different conflicts in past that would kind of drive somebody to do a certain thing or like be a certain way. And then like different ticks, like I have some characters that'll like, you know, like they'll be drinking like alcohol and they'll be like kind of putting their finger across the rim of the glass because they're a more kind of meticulous person. And so it's like something to kind of keep themselves occupied. Or other characters that'll like, you know, like have like a leg tick or something like that. Like it's little details and all the way down to like character designs. And I think this is something you guys consider really heavily, particularly Jim. And of course, Gary, but I feel like with Jim, you do this like tenfold, but I tried to do like subtly stuff too, like where, you know, these are polar opposites. So I'm going to make their colors polar opposite. So like, it's going to be like this kind of red and green and blue kind of thing where there's contrast in colors. And one character is constantly dreaming about drowning. And so there's always like fish or like water or something like that, like around in the sequences. And the other character's kind of stuck in their childhood. So they're always having like toys, like things related to toys and stuff like around. And so it's like, there's little thematic things that can also help further the plot, but can all be driven by like what the character's wearing, like how they're designed and like how they contrast with the other characters and stuff. And I think it's like the fun of writing, but it also, like I said, can be maddening. And the one thing I like about Autobio is like, you don't tend to have surprise endings. Like you can craft, you're more doing a practice of editing rather than like sort of crafting a story full sail, or like, you know, you're selectively choosing what you're going to show and like how you're going to craft it and how your story arc's going to go. But with fiction, it's fun and frustrating, like the way that characters can kind of take on their own life. And like I said, like Jacob's was weird because it ends in a way I wouldn't have, I didn't plan, and it had to happen that way. It's really weird
If you're doing auto bio and you have a surprise ending, then I think you have amnesia. So,
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, but it's interesting with your different projects. I mean, you've got auto-bio, you've got, fictional, and then you've got
Erotic.
historical fiction, where you're dealing with.
That's when I do my tell all about you and me, Jim.
The J Chronicles.
So, Cory, you had kind of alluded to that that Gary's process as far as creating characters is totally different from yours. So how do you approach when you're coming up with the characters? I mean,
well, it depends on the project. And
Yeah.
so as everybody's been talking, I've been thinking, if I am doing a story-driven project, then I will kind of like think out like how that fits into the story. But usually I'm trying to say something with most of the things that I'm doing. And so everything in that project, whether it be the setting or the characters or even the names of the characters and how they look and everything and their attributes and all that is for a purpose that will drive, the narrative. It serves that story.
Mm-hmm.
But something like this, where it's like a one-off, like I'm creating a character, but I'm actually going for like a lot more like of the symbolism and whatever else. And so like when I'm trying to do like an illustration or an animation that is message driven, but not, or more symbolic, it'll still have characters in it, but I'm really just going for like visual symbolism more than like character attributes or whatever. Like if I were to get into like whether this guy can see or hear, or like if his name is Bob or something, like that's not the point of what this piece is doing. But like, like EndoExo, like I have gone in and I have a little formula that helps me kind of figure people out. I want to know what they want, what they need, what they fear, and then I make them face what they fear to chase what they want and either get what they need or fail to get what they need. And so if I understand like their wants, needs, and fears, then that's a pretty good shape of that character. And then most things will, like from the design of the character and the way that they speak and the references that they make, will drive from that. Mm-hmm. So like I've got a character who, I mean, I've got kind of like, the Goldilocks and the Three Bears situation with EndoExo. I've got a character who is completely anti-tech. I've got a character who is completely pro-tech. And then the protagonist is kind of on the fence where she's like more nuanced. And so all of them, like everything about them is going to showcase that. So the guy that's anti-tech, he's going to wear flannel and he rides, an old motorcycle, that's pre-1980, so it doesn't have a computer in it. And like everything about him is going to drive that. And the pro-tech guy is going to be, almost a cyborg. He's like altered himself. And then the girl in the middle who's a little bit of both, she uses stuff, but she's, and so you kind of see that in the character. And so I as long as I know those 3 or 4 things about a character, like I can kind of move on with that. I don't get too much into it beyond that. Like I don't know where they grew up or who their childhood best friend was, or if they had a dog,
Do you at least even know what kind of peanut butter they like?
What about their favorite chip? What about
all of my characters?
Not a microchip, for sure.
No. We know that one.
Peanut butter with sugar in it is disgusting. So I am probably one of those people who is so blatantly obvious in the fact that all of my characters are just some aspect of my own personality. Like I don't write other people very well. Like I really just write me when I'm mad, or me when I'm happy, or me when I'm, whatever. And then I try to fake it by making them look different than me.
Well, I want to bring up something that we haven't even touched on about character development. and that is that we all work in a visual medium, and character design is hugely important, hugely important. And so when you see a character, you've already kind of in your own mind given them a very vague backstory. Oh, this guy looks like he fights in bars, or this girl looks, she's probably an executive, and this guy, and then it's kind of unraveling the character and revealing the character to the audience. But the first viewing, people kind of, it does a lot of legwork. The visuals do a lot of legwork for us as creators, and that's something to really be said. Think about. I think somebody does do stick figure theater where their characters are revealed by their actions only, but we don't really necessarily do that. So I just want to talk a little bit about how character design influences the audience's perception. Is the caller there?
Who wants to jump into this? There's a lot of things you can do. Obviously, one of the most important things, I think, I like the silhouette test. Do you guys do that? As far as and most of our Jim's stuff's a lot more cartoony, but I think most of our, Gary, you, myself, Josh, and I guess Cory as well, except when he's doing his characters are bugs. But most of our characters kind of live in the real world. They're not. You're not going to have the super the difference between the Thing and Mr. Fantastic, and where so.
I still try to do the silhouette test with those, even though I'm going for realism. I'll still have somebody who's 6'7" and somebody who's 5'6" and somebody who's 300 pounds and somebody who's 97 pounds.
Yeah.
Just so that you can distinguish them at a glance.
Yeah. And I think you can do that with Gary's stuff too, as well.
Yeah. It's the same. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm trying to find a middle path. Obviously I'm trying to make everyone sort of visually distinct and, that kind of a type that you can throw them in, but at the same time, and this is something I've talked about in my other videos, I wasn't drawing my comic in a comic booky way, I wasn't doing things like the Marvel way. I wasn't drawing how to draw Marvel characters. It was important to me setting out sort of the visual equivalent of the characters seeming very real. I wanted each person to look like a real individual and not just like a comic book person.
I just realized that the silhouette test on this guy right here, it means I'm a pervert or something.
I love how his head and neck are just as big as those.
It's funny what you learn about yourself being an artist. It's funny how it reveals things to yourself about you sometimes. But no, but I was trying to find a path where it's this looks like a person. It was a funny thing, and I had to always phrase it very carefully. But with the female characters in D vs. M 1997, it was very important to me that they weren't knockout Playboy pinup gorgeous,
right?
It's not that they're unattractive; they are attractive, but they're normal attractive. Right. But that was sort of choice. That's an example of choices I was trying to make with D vs. M, where it's I'm not trying to do comic book women. I'm trying to do actual women. I'm not trying to do comic book men. Even Ruben, the big guy in 75, he doesn't have a six-pack. He's just a big dude. Trying to I'm not doing that kind of story. I'm trying, the whole premise is, again,
he's had a few six-packs.
What's that?
He's had a few six-packs.
He's had six-packs, but he does not have one. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and it's because I sometimes I tend to forget, because when I said that your stuff is all kind of real people, but then there are also dinosaurs and aliens in it too.
Right.
So, and your story is so unique in that fact that it's dinosaurs versus Marsbot, but that's kind of, I don't know how you would explain.
It's not what it's about, and that's a weird. It was a weird line. It's a weird line I'm trying to walk where it's. I I wanted to play it extremely straight, which meant the characters had to be very realistic. I want, for all the suspension of disbelief I'm asking of the reader, the people couldn't be any of it. Like, I think the people had to be the most plausible, most believable. Their reactions had to be the most predictable, you know.
I think that's what's so unique about your story. Yeah.
So, and it creates problems. Like, I have to, when I draw dinosaurs and aliens, I need to make them look sort of realistic to match the people. But I think what people, if they haven't gotten it already from reading the issues they've read, once I finish the series and they've read all 6, it'll be very obvious that D versus M is not about dinosaurs or aliens. It's about these people. It's about, and like that, whatever the larger message and themes of D versus M will be about these human characters and how they're reacting to extraordinary things and how they're bouncing off of each other. That's going to be a lot of the point of this.
Yeah, you guys, I'm going to give a big spoiler, but actually in the next DVSM, there's actually a line in it where they turn to each other and say, wait a minute, we're the dinosaurs and Mars bots, not
Maybe
them. We are.
Right. That's, you spoiled issue 6 right there.
What don't they say? These mother effing dinosaurs on this mother effing plane.
I guess I don't have to squatch. There's no point in working now.
So I'll give a testimonial of how important backstory can be to attracting fans, because that's what happened with me. I had heard of D versus M, never read it, saw Gary's video on Jenny, and again watched the backstory and the details and where she's coming from, and was thoroughly interested after that. And when I finally did read the book, it added so much to it, you know. If I had never, with Ruben, there wasn't a backstory video, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. But just knowing, it's kind of like, I guess how Trekkies feel when they watch episodes of Star Trek and they go, see that red shirt in the background? That's, you know, that's Vaughn, and he's so it does.
Part of what I'm doing the videos for is for the fans who I know, you know, we all can appreciate there's an element of sort of geek enthusiast culture, myself included, that just can't get enough information about their favorite characters. So like, that's part of what I do the videos for. And I also do part of, like, you know, for the fellow creators, just to show, like, just to talk about process. Like,
I think deep down, we're all doing it for the Squatch.
Yeah, and for Squatch, for sure.
The Squatch, you feel like that. Doing
Squatch.
It for the Squatch.
You know, you two have something in common. I think Ruben is both yours favorite characters. But
yeah,
now you can go and hang out.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So I'm curious, like, Jim, like with character design and stuff, like what do you consider? And then I definitely want Scott to chime in too, because he definitely does like the silhouette test, like to a T, like to the
it's
point
actually
where,
on the logo.
It's on the logo. Yeah. But I'm curious, Jim, like, first, like, what kind of makes you include stuff? And then are you like Gary, where you're going to pre-think the scar or whatever, or are you more playful about it, where you'll like draw a guy and be like, it'd be funny to have a scar, and then invent the story from it? Or is it just like, I don't know, I'm just kind of curious how you approach it.
I'll just tell you real quick, using you as an example, the cool pastor that Josh plays in Pleasure Beast. He's a pastor, and he's ripped, and he's just, you know, into working out, and, you know, he's got a neck tattoo. There's a lot of little subtleties that went into that character that just kind of tell you who he is. He mentions jet skis at one point, mentions the river, and he's ripped, and his clothes are kind of, you know, form-fitting, and so that shows like a level of vanity. And obviously he was based on some real characters out there, but when designing him, again, the neck, he's got a big massive neck, but I don't know, just a certain feel, so I guess this would kind of fall into the silhouette test a little bit. I like shapes, you know, just the rough outline shape of a character is very important. How long the arms are, or how their posture is, or how big the neck is, or if they don't have a neck, you know.
Yeah, like El Diablo in that too, right? Like his whole silhouette is like almost like, you know, vampiric.
Yeah. He was inspired by Marlon Brando a little bit.
So good.
And but yeah, that's very important, these shapes and things like that. But that also, I mean, I've had characters too that are, you know, massive, you know, big boxy characters, but their personalities might not match that. So it's I guess it's very character specific for me. But I don't know. I'm be curious to see where you guys get a lot of your inspirations for the looks of your character and what that says.
Well, for me, and I think the way I approach or will approach, I mean, I've been working on Young and the Dead. That's pretty much my main project that I've been working on for a while. But I have a feeling the next project I do is going to be a totally different approach to designing character. But with Young and the Dead, because it's sort of an homage to a certain genre of film, I'm looking at certain archetypes, and I'm also looking to what I can do differently or spin certain things in certain ways. So, and that comes into design too. So like one of the archetypes that you'll find in a lot of kid action 80s kid action adventure films is there's always the heavy kid. And, you know, whether it's, you know, Goonies, Monster Squad, Stand By Me, Sandlot, whatever. Actually, that's 90s, but there's always that heavy kid, and it's always a boy. So I wanted to do something. Well, what if the heavy kid's a girl? But I didn't. But then I'm like, well, I don't want her just to be like the fat kid. So I wanted her to be like a tomboy. She's kind of husky, but she's also, some of it's muscle, some of it may be a little fat, but she's active, and she's, you know, sports, and she's tough and everything like that, which is a little different spin. And then, you know, and then spin that off into, you know, some of my other characters. Some of my characters are based on, at least with Young and the Dead, you know, the hero kid is kind of, whether, again, it's funny because the sort of the leader type, and mine's more of a sort of a reluctant leader, and that's the character I guess that's most likely or most based on myself. The two brothers are based kind of on me and my little brother. Yeah, and for me that's a way that I can, whatever situation I throw that character into, I know how they're going to react, because I can say, well, how would I have reacted when I was 11 years old, or how would my little brother react, or whatever. And then some characters are based on a couple different people, so then that creates a challenge. Like, okay, so I'm kind of drawing, my character Lloyd is based on a couple kids I knew growing up, and they were very different, but I'm just kind of combining them. And Lloyd is sort of this, he's probably my favorite character, because he's sort of this nerdy type Dungeons and Dragons type character. You know, he makes his own weapons out of wood and all this stuff, and all of this stuff is like super nerdy, and he's sort of in a world of his own. He's not the popular kid. But when this apocalypse happens, he's in this unique position where, you know, he's the kid that knows everything about every zombie movie and everything like that. And my story, unlike Walking Dead, where no one's ever heard of a zombie in the Walking Dead universe until I don't even think they say the word. Mine is very much, oh, those zombies have been in the pop culture and everything. He knows everything about it. So he knows that lore. He knows all about it. So he's just like an expert. He's got all these weapons he built. He's sort of just been practicing. I don't know if LARPing was a term back then in the 80s, but, you know, so he knows hand-to-hand combat. He knows all this kind of stuff. And so it turns out that in pre-apocalypse, he's just kind of this nerdy kid, but now he can kind of step up and become more of a hero. And in some ways, he is kind of the leader. He's the one that the main character sort of relies on, because of his knowledge and everything like that. So some of these characters are, you know, different than what you would see in like a Goonies or whatever, but some of them are similar. But you know, there's always and it's by design that my characters in some way are. I mean, they're not complex. I would hopefully there's a little more than one note, but a lot of those characters that they're based on in those archetypes are kind of one note characters. You know, you look at Goonies and, you know, Mouth is kind of he's the loudmouth kid, and that's kind of what he is. And then, you know, you've got Chunk, he's the fat kid, he likes to eat. You know, it's a lot of those are very one note. So I don't want to get too complex. I think with Stranger Things, one thing I like about that is the character's a little more complex in a lot of ways. So, and that came after, after I started writing Young and the Dead. So I as much as I like that, I still, to do this sort of homage that I'm doing, I'm trying to keep them pretty basic. Like, this is who this character is, and they don't kind of waver from that too much.
Scott, would you ever think about doing for your characters sort of a Marvel Guide to the Universe handbook?
I did. Well, I did. You know, it's funny because I think I only did one. So they put out, and Gary, were you involved in this? They put out like an Arizona. I don't know what it was like. It was Arizona, like almost like a Marvel Universe. Like it was something that was going around with people at Phoenix Comic Con. Do you know Denny Rosselli and Eric Mingle?
I know what you're talking about. I didn't do it.
So yeah, they put a guide to the AZ universe, and they just got Arizona creators to, and because I don't really have like mine's an ensemble cast, so I just did one page and kind of discussed the characters as a group. But I did sort of do that, you know, but not individual characters and everything. So I contributed to that little project. So I did that. But yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I mean, I think when I design characters, I could probably go back and pull my original designs and my original concepts, and I would kind of put all that information, what their first name is, last name. You know, they don't have occupations, they're kids, but certain things like that, you know.
So that was my really great talk show segue for Cory to reveal something on the screen.
You're muted, Cory.
I was ready 10 minutes ago, and then
now he's totally moved off it. Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
So click on the second one from the left down.
This one?
No, next down.
This one?
There, left. No, to the guy.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
There, right there.
Right.
Okay. So this is what character assassin is. I don't know if you can zoom on that or not, but
yeah, I can try.
But these are kind of my little character, character cards or character guides that I put out for various characters. Some of them main characters, some of them side characters. But I did this for my patrons first, and then I released them on Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff. But I have a ball doing these. I love telling, what allergies my characters have, or,
I really enjoy reading them. I've been liking every one.
Thank you. I mean, this is something I would like to see on other people's characters.
Yeah.
I put this challenge out there for you guys to do this. I love learning somebody's hometown, where they're from, and then just a little bit. I think I announced this on an Artcasters a few shows back that I was going to do this. Originally, it was going to be done on YouTube, and it was going to be me talking about the characters. And then I realized that was incredibly, incredibly difficult and not fun.
Tell me about it.
And I realized that Gary was a horrible influence on me. He just led me down the wrong path into a dark alley. Again. Yeah. So kudos to you, Gary. You do it so well, but there's a lot of work into that. And
it is a lot of work. Yeah.
This is a lot easier, but this is Jim Lujan character assassin. So I figured I announced it on the show, so I wanted to come full circle and show it. And
I love it though, and I love the little for people who like Jim's animations and stuff too, it has like a bunch of little, like even the character bios have little shout outs to like the Lujan universe. And so it's got a lot of like little cookie crumbs and stuff for people who like already like Jim's stuff. Like it goes even deeper, even on the character cards. It's great.
Yeah, it's great because I mean, you can do it because you do have this universe. When you say appearances, I mean, you've got so many different shorts, and it's interesting because, you know, maybe this character was in the background and somebody didn't even really know it. So it'd be like first appearance, and you're like, really? That? Oh yeah, and you go back and watch it. Whereas I remember my previous to Young and the Dead, I was working on a project called Retrofits, which never completed, but it was this kind of a superhero story, and I would do the same thing, first appearance, and it would all be Retrofits #1, you know, because it wasn't anything else other than that. But I love the idea of that sort of that rich world that you've built. And all
this is a good example. This specific one is a really good example to go to what we were talking about earlier about when creating a character, how much of the backstory is made beforehand and how much is made after. Because this guy, everything on here is like 50-50. Like for example, when I created this character, I always knew that his hometown was, for some reason, going to be Sacramento. I just thought to myself, I don't know, he's going to keep me from. But I didn't know that his favorite book would be The Art of the Deal.
But what I have loved about all of these is, you know, however random and narrow each of these little details can be, for each character, it makes perfect sense. Like it just fits. You can, you really can tell it's not just Mad Libs just plugging in, you know, just random just random nonsense. Like it all makes sense for the particular character.
No, this is definitely prepared nonsense.
It's prepared nonsense. There's a method to the madness.
Absolutely.
Sure. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Cory. Thank you, by the way, Cory. I know you were standing by.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got to get back on Instagram so I can.
I seriously would love to see you guys do something like that, because as a fan, that's what I like to. I mean, it's interesting to see, and it also makes you.
You know what? I do have that on. I forgot. I've got a series of trading cards, and it covers each one of their. So that bio's on the back of the card. So yeah.
Yeah, I've done them, and I'll read you one. Billy as a floating skull was kind of difficult childhood, but he decided to wear suits, which was fine until he started bleeding gold all over the suits, and his mom got very angry with him, and so.
All right, so we had a question
around with LSD kids.
Yeah, see, drugs don't really. It's not the way to go, kids.
No.
I got a question that I think is. I think that might be a good way to kind of answer this, and I think we're getting close to the hour and a half. So I wanted to go through and see what you guys have to say about this question from Chase Williams. How do you develop the character's personality towards the climax? Or denotement of the story when they experience change or certain hardships that make them change overall as a person?
Yeah, so that is because I'm not a good writer. I rely really heavily on like what I have studied about writing, and so my characters are driven from stuff like that. Like I want to say like. I want people to think about this thing, and so I want somebody to have this type of change, and I will actually like build it back from that change. Like, what would be the impetus of that change? Okay, well, they need to start in a different place, and so a lot of my main characters that are going to drive that story are actually like reverse engineered from that moment of like, this is the part of the story where we're going to have that kind of like climactic shift. And then, so what would they need to be scared of, or what would they need to want, you know, for this to be an impactful moment? And so I go at it from that point and back.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add anything?
I think it depends on how you want what you want the audience to think of your character when they face their challenge. Do you want them to sympathize with them? Do you want them to look at them and go, wow, that's a tough decision, but it's the right decision. So that shows they have a lot of character. Or do you want them to look at the character and say, wow, they really freaked out, but you can't blame them. But I think, little side tangent, I think really when I think of this, interesting example of this, this is the right place for this example. In Empire Strikes Back, when they're closing in on Hoth, when they're closing the doors and Han Solo jumps on a tauntaun and goes out to find Luke, that I'll see you in hell, that.
Mhm.
And that just really, really shows the fiber of his character. Even he's a scoundrel, he's probably going to die out there saving his friend. And then just a few short years later, he crashes his plane on a golf course. So it's an amazing trajectory. But
It was a weird choice for Han Solo.
yeah, I just thought that was.
Yeah.
But no, but that's a really good example about how your actions can speak louder than words, and in the character. So it's like to answer that question, in my opinion, it's what you want to convey, what you want the audience to think about your character, their reactions. Yeah.
Right. Or what kind of ending you want to give them. Like with 97, this is a little spoilery, but I know Chase has read 97. I knew I wanted a kind of ambiguous ending where, depending on how you want to think about it, it's either a really good ending or a really bad ending. And I needed Jenny to basically demonstrate some personal integrity, which feels like a victory, but at the same time that fucks her, excuse my French, and that's kind of a downer ending. I wanted both those things. So you come away and you can't decide like what you think about that. Like, is that a good ending or bad ending? Should you be happy for Jenny or sad? Like, what do you think about this? So knowing that that's where I was going, that's where, kind of like Cory was saying, you're sort of working backwards. You're saying like, all right, well, if this is the scenario the Men in Black are going to lay out for Jenny, and I need her to not be interested in that deal, what are all the how do I need to arrange the clockwork gears in her body to make it so it's going to end up in that place where she has to basically surprise the antagonist and please the reader and leave them with a kind of melancholy ending. So it's a little bit of tracking backwards.
Hey Gary, is fuck French?
It is.
Okay.
I think it's spelled with a P.
If you do it right.
Yeah, I think it depends on the position.
That's not Cory. That's the line of the night. That was a good one, Cory.
What was that?
You know what, Cory? Maybe it is good that you're doing hard drugs. Maybe.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great way to close it out. Unless there's anything else that anyone wants to kind of tag on as far as on our topic on character. Any last words that anyone wants to
No, I think Gary's pretty much sealed it with the potty mouth.
Yeah.
Thank you. I tried.
Thanks, Carrie. You just demonetized me.
You French guys.
It's all, blame
This
the
video
French.
was going to make Scott $6, and now
C'est la vie.
I mean, I don't think that would be.
I can't believe I was the first person to swear tonight. That seems outrageous. Let's re-roll the tape.
Wow.
All right, guys. So well, I guess we'll go around the room and do what we usually do once more, and anything you guys have to promote. So I know Josh has something to promote.
Yes, I do. This Saturday, Friday, and Sunday, I just did that out of order for fun. But in the LA Convention Center, I'm going to be tabling at LA Comic-Con, selling copies of 2 stories, handing out exclusive art for free that relates to Jacob's Apartment that's coming from Graphic Mundi in May. And so I really hope to see you guys there. And then if you can't be there, you can still go on Graphic Mundi's site or on my website on Jacob's Apartment and try to pre-order it. And you can also support me by buying a copy of 2 stories and kind of seeing how I develop characters and stuff, which I think you should put a lot of thought into, because if you don't develop your characters, people aren't going to care. And if they don't care about your characters, then why are they going to care about your story? So, Cory, where can everybody find your stuff, dude?
You can find me at CoryKerr.com and click on what's new, and you'll see the new stuff. But I actually have a challenge for.
Wait, Cory, did you make the What's New link yet?
No, I really should.
It needs to happen. It needs to go to Tom Jones Pussycat. Whoa. Okay, anyhow, go ahead. We'll
just guarantee that this Scott's video gets demonetized that way.
That's true.
No, but I would like to throw a challenge out there for everybody to go to my Instagram, and the last 9 to 12 posts, I would like you guys to give these characters a backstory. And maybe I'll give some prizes to the best 3 or 4 backstories. I think that.
I feel like I've got to do that grasshopper thing there.
I'm looking at the fish, the lady with the fish swallowing her head.
Yeah. So I'll say this. I've got some stickers, and I'll send some stickers out sometime next week to whoever makes me laugh the most on character backstories for these guys.
I love it.
That's a cool challenge. All right, Gary, what about you? Anything you got to promote?
Right now, like I said, I would really like just people to help me out and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm sold out of comics right now. There will be a restock in the foreseeable future. Thank you very much. So what would really help me out is absolutely free to people watching at home. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell so you get alerts when new videos come out. And you could follow me on my Instagram, Dinosaurs vs Marsbots. And one last thing, thanks everyone who showed up in the chat. But Frank, stop talking to my girlfriend.
So yeah, definitely check out Gary's channel if you like the stuff that we do here in Artcasters. It's just deep dive into process and stuff like that. You're gonna love Gary's channel, so definitely check it out. Jim, what about you?
I just have to note that Frank says this was the wrong episode to watch with my church group.
I like that
on a projector.
I like
Thanks,
that.
Gary.
Yeah, you're welcome, Frank.
There's a line in Blue Velvet that says something about Frank. Here's to your, anyways, go watch Blue Velvet. You can find my stuff
at church on a projector. You should watch it.
Yeah,
yes.
If you can. Yeah.
Yes. You can find my stuff at jimlujan.com. Tons of movies, tons of music and enjoyment. And it's actually my YouTube channel. jimlujan.com points there. So subscribe to me on YouTube right after you subscribe to Gary. And if you like what you see, click the button and the bell and smash it. Okay.
Smash the like button.
And remember, whatever you do and whatever characters you do create them with a lot of verisimilitude.
Yeah, do
it's
that.
Very important.
Yeah, because if you don't have that, what he said, what's the point?
Right. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, yeah, you can find my stuff at circworks.com, where right now I am running a 50% off special on all my digital products, all my tools for making comics. There are a couple of fonts up there as well, font packages, and of course my digital comics, Young and the Dead. You get all that stuff 50% off right now for a limited time. It's sort of my Cyber Week special. So definitely check that out. Also on this channel, this YouTube channel, in addition to all the backlog of all the Artcaster show, I also have a series called Making Comics 101. It'll take you step by step how to make comics, everything from coming up with your idea all the way to the finished product, printing, publishing it, getting it out there. So if you haven't already checked that out, do so, because I stand by this when I say it's the most comprehensive course that you're going to find on making comics for free. Probably anywhere.
Hey Siri, how do you spell verisimilitude?
What is that word?
I found this on the web
Verisimilitude.
for how do you spell for cinnamon-litude.
The cinnamon altitude.
Gary, are you high?
Verisimilitude is how you
Yes.
pronounce that word.
I just
Yes.
liked the
The
Siri
word of the
version. Cinnamon-altitude.
Yeah, she.
I think I broke Siri.
Yeah.
I think we might have to let the audience in on this now.
What we're going to do from now on in Artcasters is work a word in that has nothing to do with anything, and we're gonna.
And we're not
Jim
supposed to
try
laugh when somebody
Yes.
says it.
And we're gonna
and
make
there's-
Jim try to pronounce it because
a word people don't normally use in just casual conversation.
Wait, you guys like a Pee Wee Herman style, like word of the day, and if you guys catch onto it, you can just go ah.
There's gonna be like a duck that falls from the
Yeah.
sky that has it in its beak and is bouncing on a string.
That should be the game. We use some kind of crazy word that you wouldn't normally use, and if the chat is sort of like that has to be the one. No one would be saying plenipotentiary, like
Right.
that's and then if they get it, they get something.
Yeah, Scott is not going to use epistemology in a normal sentence, so that's got to be the.
Yeah. They'll be listening. It'll make them really pay attention.
Okay, so from now on, you guys have to try to pick out the word of the day, and we're going to try to do our best to not give it away by laughing at Jim not being able to pronounce it correctly.
Whose job it is to remember that we're doing this? Because I'll
Uh,
probably forget next
Who's
show.
coming up with the word?
Collective.
Hey, why don't we do the letter of the day? We could start with Q. Just a thought.
Demonetized again. We're really
Yes,
we're
yes.
just driving his channel into the ground. Just
Or if
right
you let Gary pick, it's going to obviously be F. So.
Which, by the way, we didn't get to vaccines. I have read some very interesting things about them today, guys, on a blog. And
All right. So, like
So not only is the video demonetized, now Scott's entire channel
he's banned. He's blocked and banned.
all right. So yeah, chat. It's up to you. You guys remember. Hopefully, we'll do the. And even if we forget, that maybe the chat will chime in and that's got to be the secret word, and we'll be like, yes, it is.
Serkland. Serkland.
All right. So the other thing I wanted to mention is this Artcaster show. We do this show every single week. It bounces back and forth from my channel to Josh's channel to Cory's channel. We usually do it on Thursday, but if you didn't notice, if you're watching this live, it is a Wednesday as we're recording this live. So that can change. You never know whose channel it's going to be on, what day it's going to be on, what the topic's going to be, who the guests are going to be. But there is one way that you can know that is by joining our mailing list, because YouTube doesn't always notify people when we go live with a new episode. So if you want to join the mailing list, we don't spam you or anything like that. We usually about 30 minutes ahead of time we'll send out an email letting you know all that information, the day, the time, the topic, the guest, all that stuff. So definitely join our mailing list, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. And I just want to thank once again the chat. I want to thank our guest, and we will see you guys next week on Josh's channel. Later.
Bye.